Agecroft No. 1 is one of a pair of locomotives built by Robert Stephenson Hawthorn for Agecroft Power Station, Salford in Greater Manchester in 1948. She has a special place in my heart as a locomotive in which I had my first cleaner's turn to learn how to be a railway fireman. What would eventually become Agecroft Power Station began life in the 1890s, and Agecroft A Power Station began generating in September 1925. It was served by a 2-foot 6-inch narrow gauge line, worked by 2 English electric locomotives, powered from overhead supply to carry coal to feed the boilers. In the 1940s, Salford Corporation planned a major expansion of the power station. This idea was continued under nationalisation by the British Electricity Authority, which undertook the construction of 2 additional generating stations, Agecroft B, which began generating in December 1950, and Agecroft C in May 1962. Agecroft A would close in 1970 and B and C in 1993. In order to serve the new generating station, something a bit better than a narrow gauge line was required, and so a standard gauge series of exchange sidings were built linked to the main line. Although both locomotives had been delivered in 1948, the new rail system to deliver coal to the power station did not come into use until 1950. Coal was also supplied to the power stations via an overhead conveyor from Agecroft Colliery. Agecroft No. 1, Works No. 7416, was built to a standard design dating from the Edwardian Period, and which was subsequently copied by Bagnalls of Stafford. Agecroft 1 has cylinders measuring 14 by 22 inches, 3 feet 6 inch driving wheels, and a boiler operating at 165 psi. The coal bunkers carry 1700 weight of coal, and water capacity is listed as 700 gallons, but this probably also includes the boiler. In working order, she weighs 28¼ tons and has a tractive effort at 85% cut-off of 14,339 pounds. She is therefore capable of moving loads of up to 1,000 tons on the level. Agecroft No. 2 was, of course, identical. A third steam locomotive to the same design arrived in May 1954, having been originally built in 1951 for Backoth Bank Power Station, Bolton, where it had been painted blue and named Bolton No. 1. Because Backoth Bank was shunted using electric capstans, the unwanted locomotive then found its way to Chadderton Power Station near Oldham before going on to Agecroft. In the 1960s, it was thought to modernise the locomotive fleet at Agecroft, and a diesel duly arrived in 1961 from Bromborough Power Station in Cheshire, but it immediately proved to be unpopular as it had direct reversing. In other words, in order to change direction, the engine had to be physically stopped and restarted in the opposite direction, and this was not nearly as convenient as the steam locomotives. Suffice to say, the unpopular locomotive went elsewhere in 1963. The regular driver at Agecroft was Ken Caulfield. During the summer, locomotives were in steam 2 or 3 days a week and every Sunday to prepare for the Monday morning surge of electricity. And during the winter, they were in operation 7 days a week due to increased demand. Usually coal arrived from the main line in trains of 30 or so 16-ton wagons. But because of the downhill gradient from the reception siding to the wagon tip, the Agecroft locomotives were only usually taking 15 or 16 wagons in one go. On the way back up, the locomotives could easily handle all 30-80 wagons. The activities of these locomotives soon attracted the attention of a youthful future director of the National Railway Museum who spent a lot of time at Agecroft during his leave from the army. He remembered on one occasion being on the footplate with Ken Caulfield during a runaway. He told me, "We did it in one go, but 25 was a bit much. The shunter hadn't pinned enough of the brakes down, and only after we had started did we realise we were not in control. This fat shunter was running alongside to try and pin down some more brakes, but couldn't keep up. Ken said to me, 'Get ready with the brakes.' I released the brakes and he put the engine into reverse, the wheels spinning, sparks everywhere. The fire was half thrown out of the chimney. We pulled it with about 100 yards to spare from the tipplers. There is nothing worse than a runaway. There is a sense of inevitability about it." In the late 1970s, the trio were painted into rather garish colours. No. 1 was painted red, No. 2 blue and No. 3 green. During open days they ran passenger trains using a pair of replica 1830s carriages. Made redundant in 1980, Agecroft 1 found a variety of homes until it was purchased in 2008 by the Science and Industry Museum in Manchester. Here she underwent a 3-year volunteer-led restoration costing £120,000. With the cessation of railway operations at the Science and Industry Museum in 2017, Agecroft No. 1 saw out the remainder of her boiler ticket at the National Railway Museum in York. Agecroft No. 2 was purchased for preservation in 1982 and is presently awaiting overhaul at the Ribble Steam Railway in Preston. No. 3 operated at the Science and Industry Museum in Manchester until the 1990s, and she has recently been restored to steam this year at the Whitwell and Reepham Railway.